When I met Laura, she wasn't living. She was surviving. There was something in her eyes that carried both strength and sorrow. She smiled like it hurt, spoke softly, and flinched when people raised their voices. I didn't know why at first. Later, I learned the truth. Years before we met, Laura had been attacked by someone she trusted completely. His name was Ryan. They had grown up on the same street. Their families were close, almost like one. Everyone thought they would end up together one day. He was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. She was quiet, kind, the kind of girl who apologized even when she wasn't wrong. One night, when she was in college, she went to his apartment to study. It wasn't the first time. But that night changed everything. He crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. He didn't listen when she said no. And when she tried to fight, no one believed her. Not the police. Not the campus. Not even her own mother. They said she must have regretted it later. They said she was confused. Ryan walked away untouched. Laura was left with shame and silence. Then she found out she was pregnant. By the time she knew, it was too late for any choice. The law in her state made sure of that. So she carried the pregnancy alone. She didn't smile through it. She didn't glow. She cried through most nights and tried to hate herself less each morning. When Emily was born, Laura looked at her and saw Ryan's face. The dark hair. The eyes that weren't hers. The features that reminded her of everything she wanted to forget. She tried to love her. She really did. But sometimes, love isn't enough to fight trauma. There were nights she couldn't hold her baby without shaking. Panic attacks. Flashbacks. Memories that clawed their way back no matter how deep she buried them. That's when I came into her life. Emily was still a baby. Laura was exhausted, working 2 jobs, barely keeping her head above water. I saw her one night, crying in her car outside the grocery store. I didn't know her name then, but I knew pain when I saw it. Over time, we became friends. She didn't want to date anyone. I didn't push. I just stayed. Little by little, she started to breathe again. She told me her story one night, after months of silence between us. She waited for me to leave. But I didn't. I told her she didn't have to apologize for surviving. That night was the first time I saw her cry without shame. From that day on, I knew I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't fall in love with perfection. I fell in love with her strength. And I fell in love with the little girl who had no idea how much she'd already saved her mother's life. Emily was still a baby when I became part of their lives. She cried a lot back then, tiny fists clenched like she was fighting ghosts in her sleep. Laura was always tired, always scared she was doing everything wrong. I started showing up after work, bringing groceries, fixing little things around her apartment. At first, she resisted, said she didn't need help, but her eyes told a different story. Soon I was the one holding Emily when she wouldn't stop crying. The one rocking her to sleep, while cartoons played with no sound on the TV. The one changing diapers at 2 in the morning, because Laura was too exhausted to move. Those nights changed something in me. I stopped thinking of her as Laura's kid. She was my daughter, even if the world said she was. When Emily learned to say Dad, I didn't correct her. It felt right. It felt like the first time life gave me something pure. Laura saw it too. She started smiling again, little by little, the kind of smile that means safety. We became a family, not by design but by choice. When Emily took her first steps, I was the one she ran to. Laura cried that day, not from sadness, but from something close to hope. Years passed. We got married quietly, just us and a few close friends. Emily wore a yellow dress and threw petals in the air like it was the most magical day ever. She was 6 then, full of questions, full of laughter. Our house wasn't perfect, but it was full of noise and warmth. I taught her how to ride a bike, how to swim, how to drive. I showed up to every school play, even the ones where she only had one line. We built a routine that felt like home. Laura healed slowly, but she healed. She went to therapy, started sleeping through the night again. There were bad days, sure, but there was always love between us. When Emily was old enough to ask, we told her the truth, or part of it. That I wasn't her biological father, but that I chose her from the moment I met her. She didn't ask many questions. She just said, "You're still my dad," and hugged me tight. I'll never forget that day. Every milestone after that felt like proof that we'd made it. Her first science fair, her first heartbreak, her first job. She always came to me for advice, for comfort, for everything that mattered. I was proud, not because I'd done something extraordinary, but because she made it easy to love her. We didn't talk much about the past anymore. It felt like something we had all quietly survived and left behind. Laura's laughter filled the kitchen again. Emily would come home from college, drop her bag and call out, "Dad, what's for dinner?" And every time she said it, I felt that same warmth, the same weight of gratitude. We weren't perfect, but we were real. And for a long time, that was enough to make me believe we had outrun the darkness. The night of the accident still lives inside my head, like a movie I can't turn off. It was late, storm clouds rolling in, wind howling through the trees like they were alive. Emily had gone to a friend's house across town for a sleepover. Around 10, she called me, her voice small and nervous. "Dad, can you come get me? I don't feel safe here." I didn't ask questions. I just said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." The roads were slick, the rain coming down in thick sheets. I remember the sound of the wipers, struggling to keep up. I remember thinking, I should have checked the tire pressure that morning. Then the car hit standing water, and everything went silent. The world flipped once, twice, maybe 3 times. When I opened my eyes, I couldn't feel my legs. The windshield was shattered, the rain pouring in through broken glass. All I could think was, please don't let Emily call again and hear no answer. They said it was a miracle. I survived it all. But the miracle came with a price. I'd never walk again. I woke up in the hospital to Laura's face, pale and swollen from crying. Emily was outside the room, screaming at the nurses to let her in. They told me later she blamed herself, said it was her fault I was hurt. For weeks, she wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't look anyone in the eye. When she finally came into my room, she fell to her knees beside the bed. "I'm sorry," she kept saying over and over until her voice broke. I reached for her hand and told her the truth. "Sweetheart, it's not your fault. You called because you trusted me. That's what daughters do." Her tears hit my arm like rain, warm and shaking. That was the moment I realized how deep our bond really was. It wasn't blood, it was something stronger choice. Rehab was brutal. Every day felt like climbing a mountain I couldn't see the top of. But I kept going, because she still needed her dad. I learned how to use the chair, how to transfer, how to live again without standing. I built ramps in our house, grabbed tools with my teeth when my hands were too weak. Laura tried to stay strong, but I saw her breaking quietly behind closed doors. Emily visited every day after school, bringing stories and terrible coffee. She'd sit beside my bed and tell me about her classes, her friends, her life. Those moments reminded me that I still mattered, that I was still her father. When I came home, she hung a banner that said, "Welcome back, Dad." The house felt smaller, but love made it big again. We adapted. I drove a modified van, helped her practice for her driver's test, and cheered her every success. We found a rhythm, a new normal. I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. But looking back now, I realized that storm wasn't the worst thing that ever happened. It was only the beginning of the one that would tear us apart. It started with a birthday gift. Emily had just turned 24, and her friends thought it would be fun to get her a DNA kit. Just a silly test, they said, to see if she had Irish roots or some royal ancestor. We laughed about it at dinner, never thinking it would mean anything. She sent it off, forgot about it, and life went on. Weeks later, she came home pale, holding her phone like it was something dangerous. "Dad," she said, "I got a match." I smiled, not understanding. "That's cool, sweetheart, who?" She looked at me with eyes I'd never seen before. "A close match, a parent match." My stomach turned before my brain caught up. I asked to see the name, and when she said it, Laura froze. She dropped her cup, glass shattering on the floor. I didn't recognize the name right away, but she did. Ryan. The man who ruined her life. The man who made her afraid to close her eyes at night. Emily saw the fear in her mother's face and grew defensive. "Mom, why are you acting like that? He didn't even know I existed." Laura couldn't breathe. She sat down, hands shaking, trying not to fall apart. I told Emily gently to stop talking to him, that some doors should never be opened. She said I was being controlling, that I was trying to keep her from learning her truth. She didn't want to hear that her truth was built on her mother's pain. Laura finally whispered, "He knew." But Emily just shook her head. "He said he didn't. He said you broke up and never told him." It felt like something cracked open between them, something that couldn't be fixed. We begged her to stop messaging him, but she didn't. Every day she got deeper, convinced she was finding the missing piece of her identity. She told us he wanted to meet her. Laura couldn't even speak. I told Emily that man wasn't safe, that he had destroyed enough lives already. She looked at me coldly and said, "I just want to know where I come from." That hurt more than I expected. I wasn't angry at her curiosity, but at the blindness it came with. She started comparing stories, his words against her mother. And somehow, she believed him. He told her they were young and drunk, that things got confusing, that it wasn't as bad as it sounded. Every lie he told, she swallowed like it was the truth. Laura cried in silence at night, afraid to sleep, afraid to remember. The house filled with tension, invisible but heavy. Emily kept saying, "I'm not choosing sides." But every message, every phone call, was a choice she didn't want to admit she was making. One night, she said she wanted him at the wedding. Laura said, "If he's there, I won't be." Emily crossed her arms. "You're really going to let a grudge ruin my big day?" And that was the moment I realized love was losing. We had spent years building a life from broken pieces. And now our own daughter was giving the man who broke it all another chance to destroy it. A few weeks later, Emily said she wanted to take her mom out for dinner. She called it a peace offering, a chance to reconnect before the wedding. Laura hesitated, but she wanted to believe her daughter meant well. She put on her nicest dress, took a deep breath, and drove to the restaurant. When she got there, she saw him. Ryan. Standing beside the table like he belonged there. He smiled like nothing had ever happened, like they were all one big happy family. Laura froze. Her body went cold, her breath caught in her throat. Emily beamed. "Mom, he just wants to apologize. This could be healing." But Laura couldn't hear her. All she could see was the boy who had taken everything from her. Ryan reached out his hand and tried to touch hers. That was the moment she broke. She turned and ran out of the restaurant, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. She called me from the car, sobbing, unable to form words. I told our son to grab the keys, and we drove there as fast as we could. When I saw her in the passenger seat, trembling, holding herself like she was falling apart, something inside me snapped. I went inside and found Emily standing by the door, confused and scared. I asked, "After everything your mother survived, this is what you do?" She said nothing. Her silence told me she didn't understand. Later that night, she called again. I thought maybe she was going to apologize. Instead, she said, "Dad, I want him to walk me down the aisle." The world went still. I had paid for the venue, the decorations, everything. And now, she wanted the man who destroyed her mother's life to take my place. I didn't yell, I just said, "Do what you want, Emily, but we won't be there." She cried, said we were making it about ourselves. Said it was her day, her decision. I told her she was asking her mother to stand in the same room with her abuser. She said, "He's changed, people make mistakes." Mistakes. That word burned. Laura sat in silence beside me, her face hollow, eyes empty. The next day, I canceled the venue. I told them to refund the deposit. If she wanted a wedding with him there, she could have it without my help. When Emily found out, she called screaming. "You ruined my wedding." "No," I thought, "you ruined your mother." She begged, said they couldn't find another place on time. I stayed calm. I told her she made her choice, and now I was making mine. She said I was cruel. I told her cruelty was bringing a monster to dinner and calling it forgiveness. After that, we stopped talking. Days turned into weeks. Laura barely spoke, moving through the house like a shadow. The silence was heavy, but it was safer than the lies. And deep down, I knew something between us and Emily had finally died that night. The week before the wedding, the phone rang. It was the caterer asking for final numbers. That was when I realized Emily still thought we were coming. She truly believed we would just show up, smile, and pretend everything was fine. Laura told me to let it go, but I couldn't. I called the venue and made sure the cancellation went through completely. A few hours later, Emily called. Her voice was shaking, furious, desperate. "You ruined my wedding," she screamed. "You took everything from me." I let her finish. Then I said quietly, "You made your choice. This is mine." She begged, said she didn't mean to hurt us. But she still couldn't understand what she'd done. She still called it a misunderstanding, not a betrayal. I told her the truth. "I spent years building this family. You tore it apart in weeks." She said she just wanted everyone to get along. I told her peace doesn't come from pretending monsters are human. She cried harder, said Ryan had left. He said it was too much, that he couldn't deal with the drama. So the man she defended, the man she threw us away for, disappeared. I felt no satisfaction, only silence. Then she asked, through tears, "Can you still walk me down the aisle?" For a moment, I almost broke. Almost. But then I saw Laura's face, pale and distant, the weight of years pressing on her shoulders. I said, "You handed that place to someone who destroyed your mother. You made that choice." She whispered, "I just wanted a normal wedding." And I said, "You don't get normal, Emily. Not after everything we sacrificed to give you a life." There was nothing left to say after that. I hung up the phone and sat there in the dark, listening to the rain. Laura came into the room, didn't ask, didn't speak. She just rested her hand on my shoulder. Neither of us cried. We had no tears left to give. The wedding went on anyway, but not like she planned. Her cousin told us later it was a backyard setup with folding chairs and cheap speakers. Half the guests didn't show. There was no music, no father-daughter dance, no moment to save. The man she called her real father never came back. He went home to his wife, his new life, like Emily never existed. Months passed without a word from her. No apology, no photo, not even a text. I took her name out of my will. Not from anger, but from clarity. I gave her every ounce of love I had, and she traded it for a lie. Being a father isn't about DNA. It's about showing up, staying when it hurts, carrying what others can't. I did all that. And in the end, I learned the hardest truth of all. If someone can throw you away that easily, they were never truly yours. They just borrowed your love until it no longer suited them. And when they leave, you're left holding silence, the only honest thing they ever gave you. Months have passed since that day, and the house feels calm again. The silence no longer hurts. It just exists, like an old scar that stopped bleeding. Laura and I spend our mornings in peace, drinking coffee, watching the sun through the window. Sometimes we talk about Emily, but not in anger anymore, just in quiet remembrance. We gave her everything we had, and for a while, that was enough. I still keep her childhood photo in my wallet, not as a wound, but as a truth. Love doesn't disappear when people do. It just changes shape. It becomes a lesson, a memory, a boundary you never cross again. I stopped wondering why she left, stopped asking what I could have done better. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. They end with understanding. And I understand now that family isn't made by blood or promises. It's made by loyalty, by the ones who stay when life gets hard. Laura stayed. I stayed. That's enough. If Emily ever calls again, I won't hang up, but I won't reach out either. Sometimes love means letting go. And sometimes peace is what's left after the storm forgets your name.